on, I am available. Well, when Disney executives signed off a big budget remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, they probably thought it was a very safe bet for a company in dire need of a hit. A time-honoured fairy tale beloved by millions, which spans generations, borders and creeds. What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turned out just about everything. Rachel Zegler, who stars as Snow White, condemned Prince Charming as weird and a stalker, adding that she hates the original. Nice start. Leaked photos from a set revealed that the Seven Dwarfs had been sensationally axed, replaced by multiracial, gender non-specific, magical humans, after Peter Dinklage said it was backwards to cast real dwarves as dwarves, even though he's made a whole career out of being a real dwarf who's played dwarves in movies and made millions doing it. The usual suspects raced to defend this bold and progressive gesture, but that particular tale ended with a shock twist.
I think you should live in the 1930s, actually, Piers, because that's where you belong, really, listening to what you were just saying then. Also, I'm going to quote Warwick Davis, because he said he finds it patronising when people are offended on his behalf. Mm-hmm. And you've just spent a 5-minute monologue being offended on his behalf. Mm-hmm. And I think that's ridiculous.
Well, let me bring in Dylan, because Dylan is also offended, and he happens to be a dwarf actor. Yeah, and he was offended on his own behalf. So it turned out I was right. Disney responded to the growing controversy by delaying the movie for a year and replacing the magical humans with what looked like CGI garden gnomes. They featured prominently in the first trailer, which dropped over the summer.
So whistle while you work. Whistle while you work.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Well, audiences have responded in their droves. In fact, the trailer has broken records. More than 1 million people have disliked it on YouTube, making it one of the most hated previews in cinematic history. The cherished fairy tale has become a grim morality tale for meddling Hollywood hacks. Audiences watch movies to escape this kind of hectoring, virtue signalling, the insanity of the modern world, not have it thrown in ladles down their throats. We're here to debate all this and lots more. Two of YouTube's most outspoken and popular commentators, Gary Beekler, who's aka Nerdrotic, and Will Jordan, aka The Critical Drinker. And here in the studio, uncensored contributor Esther Krakow and the occasional comedian James Barr, fresh from what he tells me was a very successful trip to the Edinburgh Festival. I'll see if there's any evidence for that later. But welcome to you all. How are you, James? You missed me?
Hello.
Did I miss you, Piers? Not really. And this whole Snow White thing is just performative outrage. It is...
Actually, you're right. Do you know what? We're going to start the new autumn season, if you like, of this, or the fall, if you're watching in America, with a point of immediate agreement between me and James Barr.
Right.
That's exactly what this is. It is performative bullshit.
No, it's performative outrage.
But it's by Disney and by Hollywood.
On your part.
Really? Why?
Yes, absolutely. Because this is a movie that was made in 1937 and is being remade in 2024. And you sit here moaning about the differences between those two movies, like 1937 were the glory days.
What?
Well, what are you talking about? Why are you offended by this movie? Why do you think people are not
Because they replaced the dwarves with CGI abominations. They are pretending like Rachel Zegler is the first of them all when she looks like Lord Farquaad in the film. Somehow Gal Gadot,
so
who's
rude, Esther.
easily one of the top 10 most attractive women on the planet, is some evil, ugly stepmother, which she is not. I don't know how she burst out laughing.
Yeah, none
saying,
of it
who's
works.
the first of them all,
None
and
of
looking
it is
at
actually
Rachel.
the truth.
Yeah.
Let's bring in our two YouTube experts, because Critical Drinker, your YouTube video on the trailer has now been viewed nearly 2.5 million times. And you said the new dwarf's look is nightmare fuel. Can you explain that for us, please?
Yeah, so what they've obviously tried to do is retain the artistic aesthetic cartoon from the 1930s, but transpose it into a live action movie, and it just looks horrific. It's so out of place. And when you see them dancing next to Rachel Zegler, who's an actual human actor, it just looks awful. They don't match up. They're deep into the uncanny valley. It is the worst possible choice they could have made. It would have been so much. It would be so much easier if they just used actual dwarf actors. I don't know why they haven't done that.
Why is no one offended about the new Lord of the Rings show on Amazon, where they have actors, non-dwarf actors playing dwarfs? Why are we not talking about that? Why is no one offended about that? Why are we just picking on Disney?
Well, I am now you mentioned it.
Yeah,
well, you should be.
There's room for
could have got them in.
But there isn't, is there? You're just firing
I'm offended
outrage
about the whole
at
show,
Snow
personally,
White because they're trying to do something different.
Hey, man. You want to talk to me about Rings of Power? I will talk your ear off for hours.
Let's
but
go.
we're here to discuss Snow White. So what do you want me to say?
Yeah, no, exactly. Let's bring in. I want to bring in Jolly, because what this is really about is the fact that the people who are most angry about this are not people like me who were saying, well, why the hell are they doing this? It's such crap. It was actual dwarf actors who rely on movies like this, which literally are about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. They rely on that for really significant income. If you're a dwarf actor and you land a part in one of these movies, you make a lot of money. And yet suddenly it's been taken away from you. That's what incenses me on their behalf.
Yeah, this is where political correctness paints itself into a corner every single time. You find yourself with very strange bedfellows in this. And it's not just the actors, it's Disney fans. Disney fans are offended by Rachel Zegler's comments disrespecting the movie that made Disney. And this is why there is 1 million dislikes on this trailer. And it's a culmination of creative bankruptcy. If this movie just existed on its own, it probably wouldn't be that much of a controversy. But if you add a singular Peter Dinklage interview that cost dwarf actors their jobs, and Zegler out there popping off and fanning the flames, along with everything Disney's done over the last 6 years, you have Snow White.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the point.
But this is faux outrage.
James, here's my point, James. If you had a gay-themed movie, right, and it had potentially parts for 6 great gay characters, right? Say there was a book and it had 6 great gay characters in it. And there were lots of gay actors who would love to play those roles, right? And suddenly it was decided that that could not happen, that actually no gay actors would be allowed to play any of those roles. You would be on here leading the charge of outrage that gay actors were being deprived work when it was literally in their wheelhouse. And that's the argument which I don't think you're quite computing.
No, and I agree with you. I would be somewhat outraged, but I think there's something deeper going on here in that we're talking about stereotypes. I'm normally offended if a gay person misses out on a gay role, if a straight person is playing a camp, overtly gay stereotype.
Right, so why are you not upset for the dwarf actors?
Because I think what they're trying to do here is make it more inclusive. Plus, also remember,
it's not inclusive.
the
It's a
original.
robot.
They're trying to remove stereotypes.
They're literally excluding
why are we
dwarfs.
pretending that Hollywood is a fair place for actors?
It's not about that. But the thing is, they didn't even. Hold on.
The world isn't a fair place.
They were cartoons in the original film.
But they have a human actress. So they have a human actress dancing next to 6
But
green
how far do we
dummies.
go with this faux outrage? Are we going to say that in the movie pets, all
by
pets
letting
need to be
actors
actual
act.
animals?
Because are
we going to say that Yoda needs to be played by...
It's people like you that would be outraged that if an actor is not gay, you shouldn't play a gay role, when actors are literally paid to act. So how about we just let actors act? And if you're going to cast human beings as human roles, then you shouldn't replace them with CGI abominations and say, oh, by the way, this is
if a dwarf actor...
I don't know why you keep saying outrage.
It's a point. It actually is an abomination.
There are so many CGI movies, and there are so many people that have played dwarves that have they've used CGI to do that, and no one's outraged. You're just outraged because Disney are trying to make the world a better place, and you want to live in 1937.
Nobody at Disney's making the world a better place.
Well, I'm intrigued that you've decided to open this really serious and sensitive debate by suggesting that somebody referencing themselves as a cat equates to a child who is struggling to understand.
I didn't. I actually separated the two things.
How to identify.
Well, you heard me separate the two things.
They're two completely...
Yeah, but Paul, hang on. Sorry. you heard me separate the two things. I read out again and reminded people of the absurdity of a teacher calling children despicable for saying it was ridiculous to allow someone to be a cat. And then I said, but there are serious issues involving people who are seriously going through the issue of transgenderism for real, not just a fad of being a cat. And they're different things.
They are completely different things.
So don't misquote me.
But you're opening with that as if it's somehow something to be dismissed and somehow to be treated as a joke. And this is my problem with the guidelines.
Not to be taken as a joke, no.
Which we have waited 5 years for.
Parents being informed about what their children are doing at school is not a joke to me.
We've
I'm a
waited
father of
5
4 kids who've been through school. I want to know. If one of my kids suddenly decides to identify as a cat, I want a phone call from the school. Right?
We've waited 5 years for these guidelines. These guidelines start off by saying it's about parents being first. We're putting parents first.
Yes.
That's wrong, Piers. It's not about parents. It's about the child. It's about the vulnerable child.
You're a parent,
who needs,
right?
Absolutely. Who needs the adults around them to support them during this difficult period for them.
But the
What it doesn't need is for the child who is vulnerable to be told, no, the parent comes first. That's the wrong approach.
No, the parent does come first until the child is an adult.
So, Paula, if you want your child to be given medicine at school, if you want them just to have some Calpol, you have to get permission. You have to go through a process. I have to sign a form if I want my child to have Calpol at school for a headache or a sore throat or whatever. It is, to me, it is negligent and bordering on abusive to allow schools just to honour a child's wishes to be known temporarily as something else without involving
for them to be made
the parent.
This is where we become confused with being child-focused and saying that the child gets everything they want. That's not what I'm saying. Being child-focused does not mean that everything the child says is right. But what I'm concerned about is that saying parent first means that anything that the child says is always going to come second to what their parent wants.
So do you think parents should be cut out the loop? Let's make this a lot simpler then.
Yes,
do you think it's okay for parents to be cut out the loop? Because that's at the heart of this.
Absolutely not.
That's at the heart.
So they should be involved then?
A parent must be
they should be
involved.
told.
A parent must be involved.
No, because we're missing out on a really important cog here. So even if the parent agrees that the child would like to use a different set of pronouns, the school does not have to abide by that, and it would only be exceptional circumstances where the school actually accepts it. So at the moment, there'll be a lot of children around the country who will be going into the Christmas period now, not knowing how they'll be identified when they go into school in January.
You know what? They get identified as boy or girl.
Right, but
like the old days.
Why do you feel like that?
You don't go in and say, you call me they like Sam Smith. No, those days are done.
Piers, you're shouting.
Because it's so stupid.
You're shouting. Let's shout about the fact that the criminal stats tell us that hate crime against transgender people have gone up 11% in 1 year. Over the last 5 years, it's gone up 186%.
This is way off the subject.
So what we need to do...
I think that's awful.
So what we need to do is prepare...
Any hatred towards trans people is awful. But why do you think that there is so much mockery of trans people compared to 5-6 years ago? I'll tell you why. Because they are fighting ludicrous battles, the trans lobby, over things like demanding the right of biological males identifying as trans women
demanding the
to
right
compete
to
in sport against females. And the more that happened, and then in Scotland you saw Nicola Sturgeon lose her job because she was putting biological male rapists into female prisons where they could attack women.
What does that have to do?
When this stuff happens, the real victims are genuine trans people who just want to have a quiet life, who go through a lot anyway, and they just want a quiet time and to be respected and tolerant by the tolerant society. And I want to take care of those people.
Rally the Conservative troops and say, we're going to fight the next election on the basis of culture wars and trans.
It's not a culture war.
Okay?
It's not a culture war. I'm sorry, Paula, I'm sorry. But the issue of biological males competing against biological females is not a culture war. It is an absolute full-front assault on women's rights to fairness and
agree with that. And I think
why
we're
any
getting way
woman
off the
still
subject
defends
here.
this nonsense.
We're not talking
It's ridiculous to me.
All of you.
We are talking about that because it's being dismissed as culture
We're talking about schools here, and in my opinion, this guidance doesn't actually go anywhere near far enough.
What would you like it to say?
I don't think it should be. Can I just talk for 1 second here, because I've tried to interject repeatedly and only been talked down. I don't think it needs to be guidance. I think it needs to be the actual law. I do not think schools should have a huge amount of discretion, or indeed any discretion over this. And by the way, this is only a consultation. So we've waited all these months. You say it's years. It's certainly 9 months since Rishi Sunak called for urgent action. And it's only a consultation. Look, for me, this is very straightforward. I do not think children should be encouraged to take decisions that they may come to regret very dreadfully. A lot of this stuff is
as we saw at the Tavistock Clinic, right, Ava?
But these are the arguments that were used against children in the 80s and the 90s when we were talking about, you know, whether children could be gay. We were talking about that. You know, it's exactly the same sort of rhetoric.
And remember,
we shouldn't
Isabel,
be encouraging
we're talking
them.
about social transition.
Being gay is a sexuality.